And what is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 178 of Weighing In. I'm Marcus Hoehn, joined via the magic of the internet by my man, David Mirikitani. Dave, how is it going?
Good, man. Happy belated Memorial Day. Did you have a good weekend with the fam?
I did. We went down to Johnson Shut-ins. I don't know if you've ever been down that way.
I have not, but I know about it, yeah.
Yeah, it was chaos. I mean, in a good way. There was a lot of people out. There was actually, they had limits on how many people could come in and park. So when we showed up, we initially had to drive by because they weren't letting people in. We looped around the campground and came back, and I don't know if a bunch of people left or something, but the gate was open and they started letting people in. So my 2-year-old got to go play in the shut-ins. She loves it down there. That's the second time she's been. And
nice.
Played in the water, got a little sunburnt, which is easy for me to do. So yeah. It was a good weekend. I messed around with my little pit bike. I bought a little toy.
I saw that on social, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, what'd you get into?
Worked out a bunch, actually, and, went up to Creve Coeur Lake. It was good to see everybody, did
We were there yesterday. Crazy.
Yeah, did a 5-mile run up there. It was good to see people out, and I think, I'm on this weight loss thing, this week I'll be down over 40 pounds since the beginning of the year. So
nice work.
Yeah, well, I'm the one that got myself there. I got to get myself out of it. So that's one thing wrestling teaches you is accountability, right? You got to own it.
Absolutely. And I'll say you inspired me a little bit. So I'm probably only down maybe 5, but the other day I mowed with my shirt off for the first time in several years. So.
It's funny how that stuff happens. You're not, I was in bad shape. You're not, but you avoid mirrors and stuff like that. You talk yourself into ththings, right? I don't need to work on it. This is going okay. You start doing it and it's hard, but you feel better. So
I always get that. Do you remember that show Eastbound and Down?
Yeah.
So there's a quote on there I always used to say when people, my wife would be like, you should come work out with me. I'd say, I'm a real athlete. I'm not trying to be the best at exercising.
See, perfect. Yeah, there you go. Perfect sort of mental justification. So did that. Folks came over for barbecue yesterday. And Memorial Day is an interesting day for me because of some of the events we've done, and especially the ones tied to PTSD, and seeing, trying to avoid people that are being remembered on Memorial Day by hopefully celebrating them on Veterans Day, So, but definitely a good day. And then ready to get into it this week because, we'll talk about this more, but we got Alex coming in, Dieringer coming in Saturday, and really excited about that. And, we'll talk about where we are in terms of enrollment and how people can participate and everything else. But that's a big week, and you and I are trying to do something that really I don't think anybody else has done in quite this format. So it's kind of cool to go first. And, one of the things I respect about you, and I try to be this way too, is to not be scared. Don't be scared to fail. We'll see how it goes. Put something good together. Same, with you with TWA, with me with Brawl. Just trying to do things, man. And I think people respect the effort for sure. So anyway, so let's get started. Last week we had we talked about Chris Pendleton and filling out the staff. And, I actually interviewed Nate Engel last week, but the Randy Couture podcast just posted yesterday. He's really entertaining. So if people have time, they should watch that. So Nate's will post next Sunday. That's kind of how Andy puts them up. So, but he talked about the staff. And, one of the things that I heard directly from Coach Medlin was that Imar was getting shoulder surgery this week. Nate validated that. So nobody's saying he's done, but, he's probably going to be out for a significant piece of time, if you're getting shoulder surgery. And it didn't sound like it was minor, so I guess this is as good a time as any. If you're going to get surgery as well, the whole world's on freaking quarantine. But,
right.
And he's the kind of guy, he's the guy that people kind of forgot about at 74. He's the number 1 seed in the bracket. We talked about this, but he's really the 3 seed because of JB in the finals and Dake in the semis.
Right.
So that'll be something to look at. Then it was posted that Sajalayev has COVID-19. I think this is interesting. I don't think it's good. Like, I'm not happy for him that he got COVID, but I think
Right.
it's going to be interesting because assuming he recovers in a pretty timely manner, the media is spending very little time talking about people recovering.
Yeah.
It's just the number of cases and the number of deaths, but they don't talk about the number of people that recover.
But I think that you mentioned something that is lacking a lot at times nowadays is the nuance of that. You know, it seems funny to me sometimes that we have to qualify a statement like that you don't think it's good that he got COVID. Like, of course you don't think that, right? But that doesn't mean that something good can't come out of something that's not good.
Yeah,
right. Like,
you're right though, but people twist what you say, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like, hey, Mirikitani said happy, he hates Russia or something,
Right.
happy
Right.
that Sajalayev has COVID, and I mean, it couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. I think if you're a competitor, and you listen to the Snyders and the JBs of the world, like they want to wrestle the best guys at their best as long as they're clean, right? Like that's
Yeah.
something those guys have always said, but they don't want to be sick. They don't want to have a cold. They don't want to have anything, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And, obviously,
I think what you were saying earlier was a good point, was just that, like, we don't want anything bad to happen. Like, hopefully the situation is that he has it. The symptoms are mild or maybe non-existent. And in a couple of weeks, he's cleared and recovered and back to himself. And then maybe that's just a good sign for things to come. Hopefully people are seeing that maybe we get more stories like that and we find out that more people have had it and I don't know, I'm speculating, right? And the thing is that
I think that's what's happening. Because if you go on the CDC website, which God only knows what to believe about any of this stuff, right?
Right.
But you got to go somewhere, right? And technically those are probably the people that are supposed to be the least biased. But if you look at the number of cases versus the number of deaths, and then you compare either one of those to the percentage of the U.S. population, it's infinitesimal. But if you look at it, all these people that had it, like this, and then there's these people that died from it, no one's talking about this other group at all. Like, well,
right.
It was uncomfortable or it was really painful or whatever the case may be, but I'm fine now, So I think it'll be interesting to see how that is portrayed. I mean, obviously, we're hoping he recovers. I mean, clearly, right? Nobody wishes anything bad on anyone. That's the worst thing you can wish on.
Right.
But assuming that, he recovers, how will that be publicized? It feels like right now, all we hear about is the bad news. So people should know. I think people know. We're both in St. Louis, different parts of suburbs of St. Louis, but like the Lake of the Ozarks this weekend, right? Like, there was clearly no social distancing, and then like the social media public reaction to it was fascinating. Like, people are like, if you think this was a good idea, unfriend me, unfollow me. And then there's another group of people like, finally people doing what they want to do. And,
right.
It's like everything else in this world, like just very much aligned,
Well, and again, back to kind of what we mentioned earlier about, I don't know that you can trust every study or numbers. Obviously you can't, right? But it's like trying to figure out which ones to trust. And that is, again, to qualify the statement, that is not implying that anyone in particular is doing anything nefarious with numbers. It's just that how you collect data is going to have an impact on it, right? Like, we don't know if we're missing certain key parts of that data, right? Like, we don't know how many people have caught it and had no symptoms, didn't report, didn't go to the hospital. Like, that's a huge question mark, because if that's a big number, that changes the landscape drastically. But that doesn't mean that anyone's doing anything to cover that up. We just don't know that information right now. Yeah. Because how do you collect it? Like, there's no way to know how many people have it who didn't have symptoms, because you can't just, we don't have enough tests to just test everybody. Yeah. But yeah, I think, some of the numbers that I've seen, there was one, I wish I could cite this source here, but there was some numbers that were put out about where most people were getting it. So when they were asking people, like, backtracking, like trying to figure out where did you come in contact with this at, very few of these people is it happening outdoors, right? It's all indoors. And so, like, to some people, it looks really bad that if you go down, and I'm sure if you're in the, what's the horny toads or something down there?
Shady gators,
shaky gators. It's right. Shady gators. Yeah, those ones. If you're in there and you're elbows to elbows, and I'm sure that's probably pretty risky. But if you got 4 people on your boat, you're out in the middle of the lake. Like, what? I don't.
I don't think the pictures people are upset about. I think it's the first.
No, for sure. But I think that's what.
Back then, yeah.
That's probably what most people thought when they were going there was right. Like, we'll just head up to the lake and we'll go out on the boat. And then you get there and you see everybody else doing the same thing. And then you just kind of go, well, I guess we'll just go eat here. And you just it makes you feel more comfortable that you see other people doing it. You let your guard down. And I don't know how hopefully we'll see in the next 2 weeks that cases don't spike. And I'm sure we'll see a little bit of a rise because you would expect that, right? As people start not staying home, you would see some sort of rise. But as long as I think the hospitals don't get overrun and we don't just see people dropping dead left and right, then it's going to be just continue to open up more, even if we see a slight rise in numbers.
Yeah. So anyway, I think, you and I probably agree on most of the stuff. Like, I think the main thing is, let's hope Sajalayev gets well and quickly, and, maybe that can kind of assuage a lot of fears that people have. So,
right.
So it's a slow week. So really, I saw something running on the bottom of the ESPN ticker, and they were talking about college football. And so what they said was the Power 5 conferences. So I'm going to go this from West East: Pac-12, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, ACC. Okay, and we had talked about this last week or two. There's 27 of those schools that wrestle, but there's 65 schools in there. Those 65 schools have a complete operating budget of $8 billion. Okay? So what's important to understand about that is that's how they pay the janitor. That's how they pay the library assistant. This is everything, okay? And it's a huge number, okay? Football generates $4 billion. Okay,
so half of their budget.
Let's skip to the punchline, okay, which is football pays for half of that stuff. It's like when people are like, well, it's ridiculous, like these kids don't really go to class or whatever else. Like, well, they're paying the professor's salary. They're paying half of it. They're paying half of everything, depending on how you want to allocate it, right? So that's the punchline, which is, I have down here in 14 exclamation points. Football is not extracurricular. It's essential. Okay. If you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. I think people that are not business owners don't think of it this way. But if you're a business owner, if you hire me as a salesperson to go get kids to sign up, okay, and you have 100 kids, and then after I get done, you have 400 kids, I'm essential. I just gave you 75% of your capacity of your, of your membership. So, but I worked backwards. I said, okay, so each school has 85 full scholarships for football. Okay. So you take 85 times the 65, that's 5,525 football scholarships. Okay. So football scholarships are full. They're not it's a completely different formula than wrestling, where people are trying to break up scholarships and we're trying to stretch 9.9 into 35 people. There's 85 kids and there's 85 rides, okay? So those rides include full tuition, full room, full board, full books, and a cost of living rider, okay? So I intentionally blew it up to $90,500 a year is the average scholarship, which is really high, okay? Most schools $60,000 all in, especially because these are all state universities. We're not talking about Princeton, Harvard, WashU, schools like that, okay? So, and I've worked backwards into this number because if you take 90,500 and multiply it by 55.25, within a couple bucks, that's $500 million, okay?
Yeah.
So these schools are paying $500 million in labor. That labor is producing $4 billion.
Yeah. Well, when you say that they're paying, that's only including the scholarships. That's not including the coaches, the coaching staffs that run those programs. But yeah,
for sure. But the coaches aren't playing.
No, right.
So
but that's the
we're going to go into that next. But just for a second, let's stay on this.
Yeah.
The people that are people when you and me turn in to watch the game, okay, we're not watching to see what Nick Saban is wearing. We're watching to see if Tua is going to throw a touchdown pass to CeeDee Lamb. You know, like that's what's going to, or not CeeDee Lamb, but he's from Oklahoma. But like, what's going to happen, right? Like, what's going to happen in the game? Okay. Right. Now, I'm not saying coaching isn't essential. I was a coach for a long time. I still coach. You're a coach, but people aren't paying for that. It's not like joining TWA where you're paying for Marcus. You're not. So.
Well, I guess I was just looking at it from the sense of that, like, the product wouldn't be the product if there wasn't somebody there coordinating it to put together the plays and make sure that everybody knows what's going on.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. You're going to take 85 schools and add another $500 million for staff, okay? I think that's a fair number. You know, that's about $6 million a year, okay? So now you're to $1 billion. You're still making $4.
Yeah. The point still remains. I don't disagree with the point at all. But
here's the point. Nobody's arguing that this is where I'm separating it intentionally. Nobody's arguing that coaches are underpaid.
Right. I would agree with that. Yes.
Like if you're arguing Nick Saban and Dabo Sweeney and Jimbo Fisher and these guys are underpaid, like I need to see a real their argument would be, hey, we get $6 million a year and we generate $250 million. So you could argue they're underpaid, clearly, but it's not as much as like your nose tag head caved in on every play.
Right. And I think that's where the ability to make money off your own name was just like a no-brainer, because it's like, okay, I get that you're saying that you can't afford to pay athletes. Like, okay, you're giving them scholarship. We can debate whether that's fair or not. But the reality is that, you're saying that, we have this huge budget, these operating costs. And like, if we just throw on another cost, we already have allocated all that money that we make, out of that $4 billion made, all of it is accounted for being assigned to the janitor, to the coach, to the librarian. All of that's already right. So if you add another cost, you have to add more income. Whereas if you just allow kids to make money off of their name, you're making money externally. Like that's a way for the kids to make the money.
Hit the spreadsheet, which is what you're saying. Like in a nutshell, hit the spreadsheet. It's completely different. It's a new tab, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that's really critical. But here's the other thing that no one thinks about, okay? If it costs $60,000 a year to go to Notre Dame, okay? And that includes room and board, right? It doesn't cost that much to run the housing and to put – so
correct.
We say there's a $500 million expense for all this. And again, that's an inflated number. I guarantee if you go through and figure everybody out, they don't average $90,500 a year. That's retail. That's not the cost. That's retail. So what we're saying to kids are, we're going to give you $90,000, okay? Some of it's cash, cost of living adjustment, stuff like that, okay? But think about it. It's, if you really broke it down, room and board, right? Like if you went, if you go stay at a place, you can get an apartment for $1,000 a month. Okay, so they're $12,000. Okay, and that's nice in most places in college towns, right? Live by yourself for $1,000 a month, and then you start adding food. Okay, and then you really add the cost of education, right? Because most, like you can take college algebra online for $200 a credit hour. So like it's unbelievable the markup. So there's a couple points I wanted to make out of all this, and I'm a numbers dork, so I understand some people don't get into the numbers. Like, sometimes I'm the guy that explains to me how the clock works, and 95% of people are just tell me what freaking time it is so I can go to work, right?
Right.
So here's what time it is. Schools are making 7x or $3.5 billion off these kids' backs, okay? The coaches are making money off those kids' backs too. Okay. Number two, the fact that wrestlers and other athletes would be able to make money off of this when they're part of the expense, their sport is part of the expense, is something that wrestlers, soccer players, lacrosse players, all these other non-revenue sports should be thrilled about. Number three is this is the way to keep wrestling programs viable. They got to come up with relationships with local businesses that don't just keep the Marcus Haynes and David Mirikitanis on scholarship, but benefit the whole team. They can figure out a legal way to do that. Number four, the haves are going to get richer and the have-nots are going to get poorer, because pick school X, whichever school's in the top 5 in the country. I don't want to name them, but we all can look at the rankings. They're going to have more money to work with than the 77th ranked team, because that money has nothing to do with where you finish is insane. So, and the last thing is wrestling people and everybody else should be helping football players do their homework. Like they need, like, and the main thing that I was bringing this up was the other thing they talked about was that in college football, only like 20% of the total revenue comes from TV deals and things like that. That 80% comes from game day. It comes from people coming to the game. It comes from people buying tickets. It comes from people buying $9 beers. It comes from people paying for parking. It comes from people buying really expensive suites. And so they don't play. It's a disaster.
Yes. Could not agree more. Priority number one is football has to happen because it makes too much money, and there's too many things that are going to suffer alongside it if that doesn't happen.
Well, I think this is a connection most people would not make. But if you think about essential things in this country, I would think like a vast, gigantic, overwhelming majority would say education is essential in this country. Okay? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you and I know a bunch of guys that are coaches, and a lot of those guys are teachers. Okay? Like, that's usually the gig. You know, my dad did that. That's the gig that a lot of people do. Okay? So I don't think you can say education is unessential, because I don't know how, like, it's almost impossible to get a job without some formal education. There's certainly, you know, the Bill Gateses of the world, but those are becoming fewer and fewer and far between. So if you say education is essential, you have to say football is essential.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they're paying for half of it.
Correct. I would like to see the exact breakdown, because I know that it would be in your favor of what you're saying, but like how much of that, what was it? The $4 billion that they brought in? Like how much of that is is used in athletic expenses, and how much of that is used in their, I'm just curious, you know, because I know that it's.
Let's put it this way. Let's just say that you take school X, because the easiest way to do is pick one school, right? And then extrapolate it over a bunch of them, because it's a lot simpler, okay? So let's say that one school has an operating budget of $100 million, okay? And let's say football brings in $50 million, okay? And let's just say that football out of that costs, I don't know, $15 million, okay? They're still bringing in $35 million, okay? And that keeps 35%. So there's no way that number is, here's the thing. These people are business people. Some of the best business people I know work in the nonprofit arena because they don't have to pay taxes. And they can do all kinds of tricky things with it. There's no way football in that scenario is costing $51 million, or you would drop the program.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
So here's the other thing. Football is covering wrestling, volleyball, boys and girls soccer, tennis, all these other sports. But if you say, like if I say to you, you buy me lunch when I see you this weekend, okay? And it costs $15. Now, that gives me $15 extra to go buy something else, okay? So I spend that $15 on my dad's Father's Day gift. Essentially, you kind of paid for part of my dad's Father's Day gift, right? Now I go spend $15 on groceries. Like, well, you spent $15 on my keto. Like, you got to pick one thing, right? Like, you can't just, that $15 doesn't cover everything in the world. But if you take the $35 million and you go, That's the science department. That's the history department. That's the math department. Okay.
Right. So I guess
try running a school without those three departments.
My question, I guess, is that if it came to be that if you look closely in a lot of, probably not all, because not everybody's run the same way, but if there's enough of these institutions that, they're profiting this much from their athletic department, and most of that money stays in the athletic department to build new facilities, to give coaches raises, to do whatever, what's to keep some of these people who maybe don't see the value of athletics from saying, well, we're going to miss that income and not be able to do that, but let's just get rid of athletics and make these actually just educational institutions with no athletic programs.
Yeah, I would tell those people that they better get on the Ivy League format of having hugely successful alumni and get endowed. Like, that's one of the things Nate Engel talked about was Oregon State, was that they're endowed so that they don't have to reach into that endowment, but they're safe. And because he talked about recruiting, because he was a volunteer assistant at Stanford and he couldn't recruit. Mm-hmm. Super interesting conversation. I love talking about recruiting. So, but this is the thing, man. Like you and me, and we're going to talk about this clinic next. It's a partnership. You and me talked about this off air. You're bringing value. I think I'm bringing value. I don't think it's as good if you just ran it or I just ran it, right?
Yeah, we are greater than the sum of our parts.
Yeah. Okay. So football, you can go, wow, but we gave you, we built the field and we did this and we built the stadium. Yeah, that's fine. But you built it with taxpayer dollars, right? Like, it's not like, Professor Smith was out selling Girl Scout cookies on, or pizza,
right.
Right. Like, one of the things one of my mentors told me in life, which I think is real, and I'll get this and I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah.
You're one of two things in business. You're either revenue or you're overhead. And if you're not sure what you are, you're freaking overhead.
Yeah. I think that what you made a really good point. I think that there's even another part to that is that that's a relationship where both need each other. Like who comes to the football games? Like who buys the 60,000 tickets? It's all students and alumni, right? Like it's all people who went to the university. And if you separate the two and you have a college age football league and then colleges, and they're not the same, right? So if you just have only educational institutions and then college age prospect leagues before pros that are no longer affiliated with a institution of higher learning, then there's nobody to buy those tickets. Like it's not the same. You've said it multiple times because people root for the laundry, right? They come to the game because that's their team, that's their school, and they're not going to sell those tickets and those numbers if people aren't rooting for their school.
Well, use you as an example. You spent your formative years of there's a bunch of formative years, but some of your formative years at Mizzou, black and gold, met your wife, all these things, formed a relationship with Coach Smith, formed a relationship with guys that you still see to this day that you go to the Nationals and visit with, and people crash on each other's couches. And when people come to town, they make a point of reaching out to each other. And you follow each other on social media and you put all this stuff. So when I say people root for the laundry, there's a reason why. I'm not saying people are just brainwashed.
Yeah.
But college sports fans, in a lot of cases, are more rabid and committed than professional sports fans. Like people that root for the Patriots, as an example, well, okay, like most of them don't even buy season tickets. So not even really a part of it. You can, Tom Brady's my guy or was my guy or, whatever. Right. But all these people are Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans now. There's just people that are drawn to people. I always liked to watch Peyton Manning. I was happy when he won a Super Bowl in Denver. I don't root for the Colts or the Broncos. I used to bet on root for whoever I was betting on. But that's a different thing. But I just people, I don't think we have a lot of hardcore football fans on our podcast. I think we have a lot of hardcore wrestling fans on our podcast. And people need to understand that it's unfair. Every football player gets a full ride. And theoretically, I think the third string kicker should not get more money than, Dayton Fix, or somebody like that. Right. And I have no idea about Dayton's money. I'm just using that as an example, but
right.
Or even a guy that took 7th at nationals, he's an All-American. He's one of the 7 best guys in the country. This other guy's the 3rd best guy on his team. like how is he getting more money? That's probably a better way to say it than use a specific name. Okay. But when this sport is generating money and this sport is costing money, that's like the same mentor told me, whenever people say it ain't about the money, it's always about the freaking money.
Right.
So people need to understand that. So I just, I had this kind of hip pocketed, and then, you wait all week to hear if there's anything else that's worth talking about.
Right.
There's not a lot of news. I mean, when the Lake of the Ozarks is national news on Twitter, you're like, okay, I guess we'll cover this. So let's close shop with Alex. So I'll set the table for it, and then you can kind of fill people in. So the clinic is this Saturday, May 30th, 5 to 7 p.m. And we'd be based on the spacing and everything else, we could have 50 kids there. How many do we have signed up?
We are sold out, so there are no spaces left unless someone cancels, and we have a little bit of a waiting list for that.
Good news for us. Good news for the people that got on it early. And so now, what is the other way that people can watch this?
Yeah, so it's going to be broadcast online via Trackwrestling. And if you look at social media, there's all kinds of links all over social media on your page, my page, the Thoroughbred Wrestling page, Missouri Border Brawl page. Anywhere on there you can find the links. Even if you find the link to register for the in-person camp, if you take it there, it'll tell you that the camp is full, but it'll have the link to purchase the online version. So you can attend virtually.
They can just go to Track Wrestling too and type in Alex Dieringer camp in the search box.
Yep.
Pop up, which is probably the easiest for most people. So $14.99, people need to understand that, we have a personal relationship with Alex. I've known him a long time. He came and did your camp 2-3 years ago. So, you guys are buddies now. And it worked. I think people understand it worked out with him going from Stillwater to here and on to Michigan. We're literally halfway, which was, I think we talked about the evolution of this. First, we're going to hang out. Then he might do a few privates, and it's just grown into this. But it's to help him with his moving expenses. And I think, he'll probably use some of the money to help his girlfriend get set up at graduate school at Michigan, and also for his training expenses. I know Cliff Keen Wrestling Club will cover a lot of that, but it's really helping a really good kid, good young man, chase his Olympic dream. So, even if people can't be in front of their TV or computer for the whole time, $14.99 is a pretty small price to pay to watch a guy that won 3 national titles, was a whisker away from winning his 4th, and won the Hodge Trophy, and is one of the 5 best guys in the world at 79 kilos. So feels like it's a pretty fair deal for people.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple hours of getting to watch live, and like we mentioned a little bit before this, it's there's been some other, I guess, similar types of things, but most things have not been live, and B, had no participating audience, right? And that's going to be the more interesting part, is that instead of spending 2 hours watching Alex Dieringer talk to a camera about technique, there's going to be a room full of campers that are going to be asking questions, and doing things right and wrong, and you'll be able to learn from their mistakes and see those things. And we're going to try to have, where they can tweet us or direct message us on Twitter, and we'll kind of have a time maybe set aside to ask some of those questions from Twitter, some social media. So some of the people following along live can have an opportunity to get questions asked as well.
People should know, it's going to be all technique and mindset and Q&A. It's not like kids are going to go live. Like, you and I are firm believers of, you get a guy with a high level of expertise in, you take advantage of that and you learn, and then you can go practice with your buddy in a 10x10 mat safely and go live or scrap or whatever you want. But, so those guys are doing it. So we want to thank Track Wrestling. Okay. We want to thank Alex. We want to thank Nike, Grant Turner, those guys. All the campers are getting Nike shirts with Alex's name on them. So that's awesome. So really, those people are getting a great deal. And, we got some really good, additional coaches, helping the kids, like Jason Keck's coming in, Chris Forbes is coming in, Matt Collins coming in, my father's coming in, Savion Severato, world silver medalist in Greco-Roman's going to be there. So you and me will be floating around, so it's great. There'll be a lot of help in showing it. So, I think it's an awesome opportunity. So I'll probably be doing a little bit of the stuff behind the camera, like talking about the nuances of what Alex did, having him do it a couple different ways. I think, I think that's going to be important so those people at home get to see it multiple times and, from different sides and things like that.
Yep. I'm super pumped for it. Also, I guess shout out to Steve Solzy at Fenton Extreme Krav Maga in Fenton for hosting us. We got out of the county a little bit, and so we could get some things done. And super pumped about the, just the participation. Like, that's been the coolest thing is, when we did this, it's like, well, the worst thing that's going to happen is nobody wants to come in person and they all attend virtually. So either way, you have an option. And if you're not comfortable attending in person, go ahead and attend virtually. Nobody's making you do anything. And that's what I think is in the spirit of what we our points of view is that if you're not comfortable coming out, then don't do it. But if you are, then no one should be able to tell you that you have to lock in your house, so if you want to go get some wrestling done, that's a good camp. I wish I would say sign up, but can't sign up now. It's full. So that's good news. That's good news. So we'll be able to get Alex a little bit of a budget for to pay for that U-Haul and gas and maybe a nice steak dinner up when he gets to Ann Arbor.
There you go. So, hey, we want to lastly just thank our sponsors real quick. We want to thank Pure and Clean. Those guys keeping the mats clean. pureandcleansports.com. Get a wrestling team bundle, and they're supported by guys like Michael Chandler, Jaden Cox, Al Davis, and then Resolite, the mat company, Digiprint mats, fully customizable mats, unlimited school graphics. They're the mat company. They're the only people you need. So go to Resolite.com. And yeah, Steve's an awesome guy. So, he actually supported our first charity event we did here, helped raise a bunch of money for veterans with PTSD. So, he's a good dude. I'm actually going to see you in about an hour and a half here, buddy. You're coming down. We're going to go visit Steve in person. So we'll let you get out of here because I know you got to do some husband and father stuff, but I'll see you shortly. The garage will be open, my friend. Okay.
Awesome. I will see you shortly.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. We'll talk to you all soon. Peace.